anticipate that I have in the past and will again in the future receive many endorsements, but few will matter, if any, will matter as much as this one does to me. I'm a lawmaker, which means we pass laws. But then someone has to go out and enforce these laws. Someone has to go out and be the face of these laws and make them apply in the real world. And so to me, it's always ironic when the people who pass these laws and do the press conferences then go home and criticize the people that are out there trying to enforce the laws they passed. And what happens when you don't enforce laws? Whether it is we stop arresting people, we undermine the people doing the arresting, or prosecutors decide I'm no longer going to take to trial people who break certain laws. When that happens, you inject the spirit of unlawfulness. You inject the spirit of lawlessness into a society. And so sadly, I don't think anyone should be surprised at the sad news that came out late last week. We have the highest murder rate in a quarter century. Nor should we be surprised, unfortunately and tragically, to learn that over the last year there's been a dramatic, and I mean dramatic, 40-some-odd% increase in the number of attacks against police officers and and sheriff's deputies. And I'm not just talking about shootouts at a traffic stop with someone that's wanted on a warrant. I'm talking about ambushes. I'm talking about efforts organized to ambush law enforcement. Because when you inject the spirit of lawlessness in a culture and a society, you embolden the lawless. And in the end, the men and women standing behind me and the men and women that work for them are the ones that have to respond to it. It's a very difficult job. And so I think it's especially sickening when people who should know better, like Chuck Schumer's hand-picked candidate for U.S. Senate, Val Demings, she should know better. It's even worse when someone who knows better and should know better decides to align themselves with this effort to call into question the work that law enforcement is doing. And they should know better than, for example, the way she has voted for not deporting criminal aliens that are in this country. Not only are they here illegally, but now they've violated the laws, they've committed crimes, and she opposes them being deported after committing crimes. It's inexplicable. And so whether it's a border that's completely uncontrolled, today we are perhaps the only country in the Western Hemisphere, and maybe the world, where you can just walk across the border, declare yourself here unannounced illegally, and you're released into the general population pending a hearing you'll never show up for. We're perhaps the only country in the world at this point, that I know of anyways, that has cities and jurisdictions that have basically said, we don't care what laws you passed, we are going to decriminalize theft under a certain amount of money. But what do you think is going to happen when you tell people, we won't arrest you if you do something? They're going to do it. So we have this epidemic of smash and grabs around the country. And not to mention the violence that we've now seen, not just against law enforcement, but against one another. These brutal attacks that we see. Now I'll admit, we're blessed to live in a state that's doing better than most in that regard. Because at least here, we still don't have a governor or a legislature, thank God, that's gone completely crazy. And we still have prosecutors that for the most part will prosecute the law. But there are plenty of people around this country that would love to see Florida become like California or New York or some of these other places that have lost their mind and become deranged. And I can tell you that as long as I'm in the U.S. Senate, I'll do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. And I'll work alongside these men and women behind me and the men and women that serve under them to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm honored by this endorsement. This speaks to more than just politics. It speaks to the direction of our country. And I think this is a direction that is incredibly important and badly needed, and that's why I'm so grateful to be with all of them here today, and I'm eternally grateful for your support. And you can continue to always count on mine.